Ashton-Jeanty, between yards and yards before contact and yards after contact, all these sorts of, they're giving him nothing. He is getting hit constantly behind the line of scrimmage, multiple yards behind the line of scrimmage, and frankly, at this point, I think he's essentially out of the race, and this is partly due to Emeka Buka having a great year, Tyler Warren putting up big numbers, Tet McMillan, I think, is maybe the most talented player overall in the rookie class.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The leader right now in the clubhouse in the odds market is Fernando Mendoza. College football purists, yep, absolutely know that guy. Fantastic. He's a great quarterback. Non-purists who are tuning in just for the biggest games, who is this guy, Joe, and how did he get here?
He came from Cal. He's a mobile kid. He's big. He's about 6'3", about 220. He's a gutty kid and had a great performance for Kirk Cignetti.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
We're in a weird place with Trevor Lawrence. This was another one of these quote-unquote can't-miss generational quarterback prospects, right? Everybody was salivating over when he was a freshman winning national championships. And here we are, about 5 years later, looking at ourselves going, is it just time for Trevor Lawrence to get a change of venue or something? Like, what's got to give here? Hopefully this Liam Cohen offense starts to come together.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Major League Baseball teams clean house as managers are fired ahead of the wild card playoff. Plus, Kawhi Leonard finally responds to the ongoing Clippers scandal. Hi, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today from FOS Studios in New York City. I'm Baker Machado.
And I'm Renee Washington. And thanks so much for joining us each and every weekday as we're chatting the biggest stories in the business and culture of sports. We also have hockey legend Mark Messier on later to chat about the upcoming NHL season. But first, let's face off with the headlines in the shoot-around.
Love what you did that. Let's start in Major League Baseball, Renee, as the wild card playoffs begin, and teams are already making major managerial changes for next season. After leading the Rangers to their first World Series title in 2022, Bruce Bochy and the team mutually agreed for the 70-year-old to depart. He was offered an advisory role in the front office. Additionally, the Giants fired Bob Melvin after 2 seasons, and Rocco Baldelli is out with the Twins after 7 seasons. Meanwhile, the Mets say manager Carlos Mendoza will return next season, and after finishing with the 3rd worst record in baseball history, the Rockies, Renee, have not made any changes so far to their front office or dugout. I'm not going to hold my breath on that. But what do you think was the biggest sort of change here?
Well, I would just want to say this is what you expect in the days after the regular season.
Yeah.
Not a team like the Sacramento A's, or now the Sacramento A's that are going to be rocking their Sacramento jersey in 2026. But it's about how quickly do you move on. And I was intrigued because you had for the Giants with Bob, 2 seasons, they were not great and they didn't finish higher than 3rd in their division in either of those seasons. It makes sense. When you look at the Twins, for example, having traded 10 of 26 players on their active roster at the Major League Baseball trade deadline, the sale, it feels like there's a lot of change that's going on with the Twins right now. So the moving on from Rocco also makes sense because Minnesota, also a team that was struggling under 500. But to me, for the Rangers, when you look at what Bruce brought from his first season, bringing them their first ever World Series title, and the 2 seasons after, yes, they missed the playoffs. Yes, they were a losing franchise, and they haven't had a losing season, including this being the first time ever in his 28 seasons as a manager and in their longevity since they were the Washington Senators in 1961 that they had a 500 record. That to me felt quick, but I think it also shows just how short of a leash managers have and coaches have across all sports.
Yeah, and apparently Skip Schumacher, the former Marlins manager, the frontrunner for that Rangers job. Meanwhile, after being suspended during her team's loss in the WNBA semifinals, Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve was also fined $15,000. This after she had to be physically restrained from confronting officials at the end of the game and for criticizing officials in her post-game news conference. Additionally, Indiana and Las Vegas coaches Stephanie White and Becky Hammon were also fined $1,000 for their recent comments about WNBA officials. officials as well. Stephanie White basically saying she was fined just for supporting Cheryl Reeve.
And that's what's wild. When you look at their comments, Stephanie White mentioned that Cheryl Reeve made valid points. She said a lot of the same kind of conversations are happening. She didn't really attack the officials. She just more supported Cheryl Reeve. And as you mentioned, Becky Hammon was the same thing and just saying, hey, listen, from what I heard, she did not tell a lie, and she said the truth. But when you look at these fines, the reality is, are we getting any sort of response from the WNBA in terms of actually listening? Because officiating is a problem. WNBA officials are part-time. The better ones move on to the NBA. The training experience is not great. And so even multiple sources have told our Amy Constable that there's a shift in physicality and the officiating's been off since about 2024. So the fines are one thing, but are you actually listening in response to these fines? That I don't know.
Yeah, all right, let's move to women's college basketball. Due to high interest and demand, the 2028 Women's Final Four in Indianapolis will now move to a larger venue. This after the Women's Basketball Committee voted to move the Final Four from Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where the Fever and Pacers play, to Lucas Oil Stadium, home of the Colts. That move will add over 13,000 additional seats for the event. The committee also voted to continue with their current preliminary round format also through the 2031 championship as well, Renee.
Yes, Baker, we continue to see for women's sports a move to larger venues, and that just is a sign and a response to the growth, to the audience. And it's fantastic because you get more seating, you get more opportunities for fans to just get the overall experience. And as you mentioned, they did vote to keep the preliminary rounds because they've seen record numbers in terms of attendance for those, the way that they had the format starting at the beginning of the tournament. So I think we're seeing some tinkering going on, but it just shows women's sports continues to be on the rise.
And big business. Well, after weeks of allegations tying him to a no-show job in an effort to circumvent the NBA salary cap, Clippers star Kawhi Leonard finally broke his silence about his alleged ties to the green energy company Aspiration. He told reporters during LA's Media Day that he's done nothing wrong. This as the NBA continues their investigation into the club. So let's take a look at this and more in today's main event. All right, let's bring in our editor-in-chief here at Front Office Sports, Dan Roberts. So, Dan, before we get into some of the new things that Pablo Torre has uncovered, let's talk about Kawhi Leonard first and how he has talked about this at the Clippers Media Day.
Yeah, he was asked about it by Ramona Shelburne, and kind of unsurprisingly, he said there was no wrongdoing. Interestingly to me, he called it all clickbait, which these days, it's almost like the lady doth protest too much. In other words, when people's first response is to just dismiss very legitimate, careful, I think, tedious reporting by Pablo, you sort of say, okay, it's certainly not clickbait. But to hear Kawhi tell it, there's nothing here. The most interesting thing Kawhi said was saying, oh, you all are hearing about this now like it's new. We've known this was coming. I guess the implication being we knew the company went bankrupt.
Right.
And he made it sound like they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. That is, they were waiting to see chatter. They were waiting for people to discover, boy, this company went under. I mean, I've compared the Aspiration mess to FTX, which, I mean, was a crypto company, an exchange. It had its name on the Miami Heat arena. And to me, it all just continues to strengthen the idea that the biggest question is, how could Steve Ballmer, purportedly a smart businessman, not have seen the writing on the wall and kept pumping money into this company, even now, as Pablo has reported, giving charity, giving donations to the charity of the guy behind Aspiration, even after the feds were already investigating.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what's hard to put together there and really buy, even if you believe that he was hoodwinked.
Right. Even since your conversation with Pablo Torre on this show about this entire investigation, he's come out with some more information, some text messages that he shared about Kawhi's agent pushing for $28 million for that no-show payday, as well as Aspiration's founder, the guaranteed another $20 million in equity. So when you look at the text messages and recent reporting, what else has Pablo uncovered even since Kawhi's comments?
Well, the donations to the charity from the guy behind Aspiration, and then that made me wonder, was there a personal relationship here? I mean, was this like, Steve Ballmer's nephew or something? Because it just doesn't really compute. And look, I don't think anything's going to change here in terms of a smoking gun. Like, we're kind of spinning our wheels. It is great that Pablo keeps reporting little nuggets, and what he's basically doing is adding more onto the pile, right? There's a lot on the pile here. And so, as I said to Adam Silver at Tuned In 2 weeks ago on stage, the court of public opinion is going to keep rolling here. And the NBA is saying we're doing an investigation. They've hired this serious law firm, the same one that investigated Donald Sterling. We know how that went. But that was much easier. There was a smoking gun. There was a literal recording. He was saying racist things. It was easy. That was an easy decision for Adam Silver in hindsight. In this situation, I don't think we're going to find an email where Steve Ballmer says, here's how we'll get around the salary cap. right? So short of that, what we have is a lot of things that sure don't look good and are hard to explain.
But nothing illegal. Nothing illegal yet.
We're in the NBA's court, right? None of this is illegal, even if he was getting on the salary cap. This is NBA law, you know? But I don't think that we're going to really see a change, and it's going to end up being in a situation where you can either believe Steve Ballmer, and we'll see if the league chooses to do that, but the public does not, or increasingly a lot of people in the court of public opinion do not, because it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit more, because in addition to Kawhi Leonard, you had Lawrence Frank, the president of the organization, also coming out saying, look, we welcome this investigation. So if this investigation takes forever, which we should note, months. And by the way, the Clippers also have the All-Star game in Los Angeles as well. How much longer do you think this goes, and where do you sort of see the next steps in this, or does this just sort of pedal out here?
Well, let me start with the Lawrence Frank comments, because he was pressed at NBA Media Day yesterday. Is that a yes or no on whether Dennis Robertson, Uncle Dennis, was pushing for anything illegal? And he just said, Dennis knows the rules, and we know the rules. Kind of a non-answer. I mean, if you just have to keep saying it, like, if it's a no, can you just say no?
Right.
So that was really more illuminating, I thought, than Kawhi's comments. What's Kawhi going to say?
Right.
I never had to do anything for the company. I didn't think that was weird. Okay, it is weird, But look, it's going to take months. These big investigations, I've been comparing this to the stuff Louis Freeh used to do. He's a former FBI director. Then he became a high-profile sports investigator for hire. He did the Penn State, Sandusky investigation. He did Mercedes. He did FIFA. And those things take months, sometimes as long as a year. But meanwhile, the public rolls on and makes its own decisions and conclusions. It's going to be unsatisfying in the end. I can tell you that. It's very hard to picture a world where, Adam Silver decides to force Steve Ballmer to sell the team.
Our editor-in-chief, Dan Roberts, thank you so much. And coming up next, for the first time in their 100-year history, the New York Rangers have a jersey patch, and it's all done by their former captain, Mark Messier. He joins us next.
Now let's get to a player who was taken in the first round of every fantasy football draft, and thus far has produced the least points, George. I thought you'd just take a rookie running back in the first round and you get yourself 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. But Boise State's Ashton Jeanty for the Las Vegas Raiders, we got out of excuses, right? Like at this point, it's they got to give him the ball more, they got to do this, they got to do that. George, does this guy look like Barry Sanders? Like, that was the comparisons? Like, I haven't seen any of that yet.
Our panicometer, all right, doesn't go high enough here. All right, because this is, come on, we're freaking out here. I don't think it's all Jeanty, by the way. He has more yards after contact than before contact. That pretty much lets you know what the problem is there. All right, the Raiders needed a running back, sure, but they need an offensive line. All right, they need a couple of offensive linemen. It's not something you can fix in one off season here. So yeah, we're gonna eat it with Jeanty. He's not gonna be worth the first round pick in fantasy. Just not this year. In future years we'll see here, but not this year. The offensive line's not very good. The defense is not very good, so they have to throw the ball more in the second mix. They're trailing every game, so that's hurting us as well here. So like I said, the panicometer. It doesn't go high enough for this, okay? I am more than concerned. I am not calm. I am critical. I am flipping out.
Isn't there going to be a time where he just breaks it free? George, like, what you said is not false. But I think there's a point being missed here. Why has he not broken free one time the whole season? Not once. To just run away. Like, he's Devin Singletary right now. No offense to Devin Singletary, but that's who he is.
Fantasy Sports Today. Fridays, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington at Baker Machado. At the start of the NHL season right around the corner, and for the very first time in their 100-year existence, the New York Rangers are going to have a jersey patch sponsor. This in partnership with Game 7. That's the multi-platform sports and entertainment brand co-founded by Rangers legend Mark Messier. And the Hall of Famer Mark Messier is joining us now. Mark, good to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk about the upcoming NHL season and a bunch of other things in a bit, but let's talk about the jersey patch. I see Game 7 already on your hat. How exciting is this for you to be a part of this and for the Rangers to have their first jersey patch sponsor?
It's a dream come true. I can't believe we're actually sitting here. We've been putting together and building Game 7 for quite a few years, the conversation came up that the Rangers were maybe considering having a patch partner. And that kind of got the wheels spinning. We had a lot of conversations with the New York Rangers, and it just became apparent that we were so aligned in what our brand stood for. Madison Square Garden, where greatness is born, and of course, Game 7, where legends are made. The stage is the biggest, brightest, and winner go home. So there was just so much synergy. There was just so much alignment. And here we are, after months of negotiating and talking about how we aligned and getting ready to start the centennial season, 100 years of history. Ooh. And we're going to have Game 7 on the patch of the New York Rangers jersey, one of the most iconic jerseys in sports. We couldn't be more proud, all of us, at Game 7.
Yeah, Mark, I love that you're still making an impact on the ice and a trailblazer being a part of the first. And also, when you look at this upcoming season, it's such a transitional season, it feels like. Looking back at last year, I'll start there, such as the success of Four Nations and Ovechkin's goal race. As a league, you know about building off of success. How can the NHL build off of the success of last year's moments?
Yeah, it just seems like every year we enter it and we go, there's just more and more great players, great personalities coming into the league. And we had so many great storylines last year with Ovechkin, with the Florida Panthers, with McDavid trying to win his first Stanley Cup. There's never a shortage of content and great storylines with the National Hockey League. And it's because of the game itself, but it's also because of the great players and the great people that, put our players in that position. For us, the New York Rangers, we're looking for them to have a great year. You look at, to your point, they're in a bit of a transition phase for a team. They're making seismic changes. Anytime you change the core leadership group, there's going to be some obviously some changes along the way, and the Rangers decided to do that because they needed to make those changes. Now we have brought a new coach in who's been here before, who's got incredible pedigree as a winner at every level. They're changing the nucleus of the team, and like I've said before, every team is built around their nucleus, and that nucleus are the leadership, and that nucleus is responsible for a lot of things that happen amongst the team throughout the course of the year. So the Rangers are in the middle of a change. I still think they got enough talent to make the playoffs. And I still think once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. But more importantly, I think after the 40-game mark this year, we'll have a really good idea of where the Rangers are headed.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about the other team that it seems like they're always in the Stanley Cup Finals, and that's the Florida Panthers. Do you expect them to be in it once again, Mark? And are you tired of just seeing the same teams in the finals every single year? Somebody else but Florida, please.
Well, I have a little affinity for teams that can actually do what Florida has done and what Tampa Bay has done and what the Edmonton Oilers were able to do and the New York Islanders back in the 80s. It's not easy to win once. It's harder to win twice. And then to repeat. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of mental acuity to kind of keep yourself focused at the task at hand to stay that relevant for that many years in a row. So I have all my hats off to the Florida Panthers and everything they've accomplished over the last few years. 3 years in a row to the Stanley Cup Finals in modern day history in the salary cap era is not easy. Mm-hmm. They're going to be faced with some challenges this year, and you can start to see the toll that has taken. Their captains, Barkov is out probably for the year. One of the most dominant players, Matthew Tkachuk, is out probably half the year. There's a toll that it takes to do what that organization has done. So I'm not going to count them out, but there's a lot of teams that are positioning themselves to win a Stanley Cup, and if the Florida Panthers can get back there again this year, it'll be an incredible feat.
Yeah, there's been talk about the Florida Panthers maybe having a slight advantage when you look at things like taxes and other factors that can help them build their roster. Do you get a sense of that difference from state to state, team to team, that might be affecting in terms of like the salary cap, as you alluded to?
You know what I've learned in the past is that nobody's talking about taxes inside the dressing room. And nobody's talking about, you know what I mean? That's all hearsay and that's speculation, and people can make a case for it, probably a great case for it. But ultimately, in the end, championships are won off the backs of people that are dedicated to the task at hand, that have a passion for the game. You execute a game plan that's been given to you. You have a vision of how you're going to win, and then you go out and work hard towards that goal. That's how championships are won, not because of how much you're getting taxed.
Mark, I want to talk about the new CBA rules, because what's interesting is we see very sort of contentious negotiations, collective bargaining-wise, across all these other leagues, but yet it was so seamless for the NHL this last summer. Now, basically, there's going to be one more game added to the schedule next year, and the maximum amount of a contract goes down to 7 years instead of 8. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you feel like that extra game is going to be a grind? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got a great head of union for the players right now. I think Gary Bettman has done an amazing job shepherding our league out of the lockout many years ago. The league is thriving at every level. Our revenues are growing every year. Our product is better every year. Our players seem to get more skilled every year. We got some iconic things that are happening with Sidney Crosby and what he's been able to do in his career, and Alex Ovechkin overtaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record. We have so many storylines. The league right now is probably maybe never been better, and we got a really good understanding of what makes the league sustainable, both for the ownership and the players. And there's a lot of harmony in our sport right now, and we're riding a lot of momentum. And I'm glad that we're able to kind of move through this next negotiating phase and keep things moving along the way that they have been over the last few years.
I agree. Rangers legend, the great Mark Messier, joining here on Front Office Sports today. Thank you, Mark, so much for joining us.
Great to be on with you folks. Thank you so much.
And we have a lot more show headed your way right after this quick break.
Well, Shadur, which quarterbacks are you talking about? Because there is some bad quarterback play out there, but the dude who can't beat Dylan Gabriel out for a job and can't beat Joe Flacco out for a job certainly can't lay claim to being better than any other quarterback in the league.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
That's a lot for a closer. 10. That's you're not a closer anymore if you blow 10 games. I mean, my goodness. That's
he's mentally broken too. Like, it's to the point where, like, Dodger fans aren't even mad at him; they're more mad at the Dodgers for putting him out there.
Putting him in,
right? It's more so.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, guys, like, he's done.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Major League Baseball has decided it is time to put balls and strikes not just in the hands of the umpires, but also the robot umpires, as they say. The ABS system is now officially in place starting next season. Now, keep in mind, they're not just throwing this out there. They have used this at the Arizona Fall League, and they've also used it at different levels of the minor leagues as well.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Everything changed at that point. They went and got Jonquil Jones, and they really had that triple threat monster team. That second year they lost in the WNBA Finals, 3-1 against the Las Vegas Aces. Year 3, they finally get over the top hump. You can question whether they should have won the title with that foul call late in Game 5 that sent Breanna Stewart to the foul line.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
And Front Office Sports Today is back, everyone, and while the NCAA-backed SCORE Act that would codify student athletes' NIL rights continues to be stalled in Congress. Democrats in Washington have proposed their own legislation and hoping to get this across the finish line. So let's bring in our Amanda Kristovich, our college sports reporter. So tell us a little bit more about what the SAFE Act is and how different it is from the SCORE Act that has currently been sitting in Congress's desk for a long time now.
Yes, so the SAFE Act does a few of the same things as the SCORE Act, like codifying NIL rights and some of the revenue sharing terms of the House settlement. To me, the most notable differences are that it omits two of the big things on the NCAA's wish list. The first is the NCAA wants blanket antitrust protections. The SAFE Act doesn't have that. The NCAA also wants athletes to be called amateurs and not employees. The SAFE Act says nothing about athlete, amateur, or employee status. The other sort of interesting thing that's in the SAFE Act that is not in the SCORE Act is, stay with me, another act. The Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 could be amended. That would allow the NCAA to pool all of its football media rights and sell them together, which some people believe could create more revenue for everybody, which could be used to fund Olympic and women's sports. So those are sort of the major differences.
So it's the Student Athlete Fairness and Enforcement Act,
Yes.
SAFE, that is another proposal around how committees are trying to balance between the House versus NCAA settlement and revenue sharing, just to make sure they're better managing and preserving college sports. Does it feel like we're getting closer to a resolution with the SAFE Act coming into play, or does it feel like we're still very far from anything being agreed upon?
What I thought was interesting about the SAFE Act's introduction was that it's backed by 3 Senate Democrats, one of whom is very powerful on this issue. Senator Maria Cantwell is the ranking member of Senate Commerce, which theoretically has jurisdiction over this issue. So we kind of got a window into what some Democrats, at least in the Senate, would be willing to sign on to from a policy perspective. So I think we're moving closer to consensus. But the NCAA, you know, they are the ones who really want those provisions that are in the SCORE Act and not the SAFE Act. So I almost wonder if they might lobby against the SAFE Act, even if there might be some consensus among Republicans and Democrats.
So let's talk about that, because why wasn't the SCORE Act, which, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, had bipartisan co-sponsors attached to it, had the NCAA's backing on it. Why was that stalled in Congress? And yet this one that Democrats are proposing, if the SCORE Act, I'm just assuming, if the SCORE Act can't get passed, what makes anybody think that the SAFE Act is going to be the remedy here?
Well, I think the SAFE Act could run into some similar issues. The reasons for there are several reasons for the SCORE Act. I'll try to sum them up. But the SCORE Act doesn't really have bipartisan support. It has a few bipartisan co-sponsors, but they really didn't signal any sort of group movement from House Democrats, right? There was an attempt to get the Congressional Black Caucus to sign on, or the Democrats in the Congressional Black Caucus as a whole to sign on to the SCORE Act, because HBCUs said that the SCORE Act, they were in favor of it. That, at this point, has not been a successful lobbying effort. Some House Republicans, specifically those in Texas, also decided to withhold their votes sort of at the last minute because they are at the behest of Texas Tech booster Cody Campbell, who has a lobbying effort of his own and who is really in favor of the Sports Broadcasting Act. And, you know, he just doesn't think the SCORE Act does enough. So they kind of withheld their votes on his behalf. And that's kind of where a lot of the issues came and why the vote was delayed and why we still don't know if the SCORE Act will be brought to the floor at all.
Interesting. So to wrap this up, because there's a lot of still discussion that needs to be had around the SCORE Act, the SAFE Act, and how this all will play out in terms of the future of college athletics. What is next? Where does it go from here?
Well, I think that there is still going to be conversations about whether or not the SCORE Act can get brought to the House floor. Those negotiations, you could say, are still ongoing. I think the Democrats, at least in the Senate, have sort of drawn a line in the sand about this is what, you know, they're going to get behind the SAFE Act, and they're going to see if they can come to a consensus. In the meantime, however, the government might shut down.
Right. So I was going to ask you, does that then change priorities given the budget showdown that they're having in Washington right now, that things like this we might not get answers for quite some time now?
Well, one might think so, but then again, Senate Democrats introduced this bill on a Monday night, 48 hours before the shutdown could happen.
Sure.
So, you know, logic may not prevail in that sense. So I think that, you know, I mean, shutdowns usually aren't super long, so even if it does happen, things will get back up and running, hopefully, relatively quickly. If there is a shutdown, obviously, it's just one of the many things that is going to be on Congress's plate that is more important than legislating college sports. But I don't think it's going to slow it down notably, because it's already kind of a slow negotiation process.
The government shutdown, the SCORE Act, the SAFE Act, so many things that we still have to see just of how it's going to unfold.
Yeah, and nobody knows what will happen. Amanda Kristovich, our college sports reporter, thank you so much. And of course, you can follow more of Amanda's reporting over at frontofficesports.com. And that's going to do it for this edition, everyone, of Front Office Sports Today. Renee and I are back tomorrow for more on the Major League Baseball playoffs. We'll see you then.